lawyer and author, and we were just discussing her first novel, Stained, which deals with the tricky subject of rape and family-based honour, and we were discussing ABDA, so thank you for your time again. And we were discussing actually how you were raising these issues because I'm
always very, diplomatic the way I say things. I'm not out there just to talk about things to get headlines. That's not what I'm about. So I always present things just exactly as they are. So I haven't had that much, but I have had a little bit. I remember in particular one event I was speaking at in San Francisco actually, and there was a group of Pakistani men there. And one of them sort of said, "Oh, you do not think you're just exaggerating a little bit with all this, all this stuff about these figures that you're saying and all this stuff that happens?" And I said, "You know what? I'd love for that to be true. That I was exaggerating, but I'm really not." And when I gave him a couple of real examples, of the sort of abuse that women have suffered that I had personally come across, he was quite moved actually. And when I gave him some real facts and figures, it actually made him think, and that was really good for me because I felt like I reached a part of the community that actually I needed to reach. Yeah. Sometimes it's great people who come to book events or whatever, but they're not really the people you really want to reach with the actual message. Sometimes you have to go a bit further afield to try and get to people who you really, really want to get the message to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's really heartening to know, because I think, if you think about sort of domestic abuse, and 20, 30 years ago, women who worked in shelters and helped, their lives were threatened, physically, violently. So it's really good to hear things are hopefully, fingers crossed, moving on a little bit.
Alhamdulillah, I haven't had too much trouble.
Oh, alhamdulillah, that's really good. Because these are things we need to talk about.
We do.
In society, we're not supposed, the Quran is very explicit, we talk, and when we talk about shame and modesty, if you've got a disease, you're going to have to talk about it, and this kind of stuff is a disease, so you can't just pretend and gloss over it, and you don't have to talk about it gratuitously, because it's not about taking pleasure from it. It is actually about thinking, because this is how I think about a lot of the societal ills that we've got. They literally are diseases.
Yes.
So we need to talk about how do we cure it, how do we deal with the symptoms, and how do we deal with the root causes.
Absolutely,
so, I think that's really important.
Yeah.
So
and there are always different ways of dealing. You do this show, you're raising awareness. My choice is through writing fiction. That's how I choose to. However we can each do whatever our strengths are, we should work towards those and try and employ our skills, our strengths, to try and make the world a better place for those people who are suffering as a result of these problems.
Absolutely. And like you say, I'm doing this, you're doing that. Yeah. Great. Lots of people are doing lots of things. But you don't have to do either of these things. Like you say, it's small things. It's having the discussion at home. It's when it comes to thinking about marriage for your son and daughter, actually planning it, thinking through what does that look like, and involving them in the process.
Yeah.
You can have an arranged marriage. That's very different. We're not saying don't do arranged marriages. Introduced marriages. There's all these like hybrid things.
Properly arranged marriages are great. There's nothing wrong with an arranged marriage.
And then
forced marriages, obviously, that are the issue.
Yeah.
But it's also just, you can do your little bit. If you learn something new as a result of, say, watching this show, or talking to somebody, pass it on. Because it's about raising awareness about the issues. So you might just do something as little as pass it on, and you might save somebody's life by giving somebody some information that you don't know that at the time.
Absolutely. And definitely we need to talk to women, but we also need to talk to men.
Yes.
Most of domestic abuse is committed by men towards women, but not all of it.
Yeah.
Because obviously sometimes it's men on men, women on women, and sometimes it can be the other way around, which people don't hear about that much. But the important thing is actually we talk about these things, we refer people, we help people where we can, and we think about our behaviours as well.
Yes,
what is it that helps collude? So gossip is one thing that I think is a collusion factor, which is if the community at large didn't talk about that woman who's walking down the street without her hijab on or her whatever.
Women are always demonised for the way they dress, the way they behave. But that's not, you're not being a good Muslim if you're backbiting.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's specifically prohibited.
Yeah. And it's little things like that. They make a difference, don't they?
They do.
We've got to learn to live and let live. People make different choices. If you want to, Islamically, you think you know something good and helpful, and you want that good thing for that person, then you find a nice, kind way, appropriately, to raise it with them. But only if it really is your role to do so. Because you know what? If I'm walking down the street I don't want random strangers talking to me
Exactly.
about my dress being too long, too short, or my hijab being wonky or whatever. That's my business, my family's business, my friend's business. There are lots of people that I will more than happily listen and take advice from. But, you know, it's not everybody's job to do that.
Absolutely.
And I suppose the reason why we're talking about community and responsibility is because your second book, Razia, deals with the as tricky issue of modern day slavery.
Oh God, yeah. It's interesting. I personally didn't have any involvement or any knowledge of modern day slavery until I accidentally kind of came across an online article. And you know how sometimes you're just flicking through things and something just catches your eye. When I read on there a story about a modern day slave, I was really shocked. I had no, you know, as somebody who's quite clued up on things, I really didn't know the extent of the problem. There are 46 million modern day slaves in this world. And that's a gross underestimate, they reckon. But those are the kind of official figures.
Could you just describe quickly what modern day slavery is then? What is a modern day slave?
A modern day slave, well, you know what, it's hard to pin it down to one definition, but obviously it's somebody who is made to work or do something else against their will and often without any pay. So modern day slavery comes in of very little pay. So it could be domestic servitude, it could be forced labour, it could be sexual trafficking, it could be, you know, just sometimes it could be as simple as being made to work in an environment they're not happy with. It could be,
there was a prosecution in Bradford or Harrogate, I can't remember now, where a restaurateur was prosecuted for modern day slavery.
That is happening a lot more
because what they'd done is the workers that they had working in the restaurant, they'd taken their passports away. If they paid them, they didn't pay them enough. They said they owed them money.
And they're often abused, they're often, you know, neglected. You know, these people are often tricked into coming and working in the UK because they're promised this great life and accommodation, and on paper it sounds great, but when they get here, their papers are taken off them, their passports are taken, they're made to work for peanuts, and then often they're kind of like all cooped into one, about 6-7 people in one room, maybe more than that. There's a very famous Rooney, I don't know if you heard about the Rooney case, where they'd a family, the Rooney family, had kept slaves for about 30 years, or a long time anyway. I can't remember the exact amount of time, but lots of men. And what they used to do, they used to pick up vulnerable men, like homeless men, or men lingering outside soup kitchens, and promise them you know, accommodation and a wage. And for somebody who's got nothing, that sounds great. You know, you think this person is going to give me a job and they're going to give me somewhere to live, rent free. But when these guys got to, you know, their final destination, they were abused, beaten. They were made to like lay driveways and things, and not hardly paid anything. They were locked up in filthy caravans. It was just awful, the squalid conditions in which they were made to live. And these were all very vulnerable, broken men. And you know, it's a big problem here. There's about 15,000 slaves, the Home Office estimates, in the UK. 4 out of 5 all human trafficking victims are women. Wow. And about a quarter of all modern day slaves, at least a quarter are children. And there's even things like slaves for organ harvesting, cannabis farms in the UK where they use children.
Oh my
goodness. It's a real underworld, hidden kind of world, but you know, it is kind of all around us as well, but we just don't, a lot of us don't know what the signs are.
So, I mean, it's quite shocking and overwhelming as some of the figures, and I do always say I can't believe the things that we humans can do to each other.
I know.
I don't know how
it's big money for the slave masters. It's really profitable, you know. So these people don't cost them anything, you know. So look at sexual trafficking victims, you know. They move from city to city. They service many clients a night, and they bag heroin all day, for example. Look at the money's worth they get from
and it literally is that, isn't it? It's free labour.
It's awful.
So unfortunately, our time together is nearly coming to a close. So Razia's story. Can you just give us quickly Razia's backstory? And
right. So basically, Razia is about story about a modern day slave. So it's a story of Farah, who is a British Pakistani lawyer who works in London, and she accidentally comes across Razia, who she's convinced is being kept as a modern day slave in London. She rescues her, but in doing that, she kind of makes her life a bit worse. She doesn't realise the forces she's playing with. Razi actually comes from a family of bonded slaves in Pakistan. And bonded slavery is another form of slavery which people really don't know much about. And it takes Farah to Pakistan and to that shady world of bonded slavery and corruption.
Wow.
As she tries to get justice for us, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So again, not shying away from the tricky issues, but really, really important, because we do need to shine a light on dark corners, don't we? Because this stuff happens, it's happening on our watch, it's happening around us, and we need to be vigilant. And it's difficult to believe, but you know, unfortunately, maybe even someone we know.
And at the moment, I'm getting a lot of requests from media, especially to come and talk about it, because actually not many channels and radio stations have so far covered modern day slavery in any great, especially our community radio stations and TV stations.
Absolutely. So we've only got about 30 seconds left. If people want to get in touch with you or want to learn more about you, they can buy your book from Amazon.
Yeah.
And if they want to learn more about you and follow you and your amazing work, where should they go?
Just go to our website, abdakhan.com.
Okay.
That's easy.
Yeah, that's good. So abdakhan.com to keep up with, you know, Abda's amazing work.
And then they'll get my social media links from there.
Yeah. Absolutely. So any final thoughts for our viewers on the topics that you're dealing with, but also the fact that you're just an inspirational woman? Because, you know, like you say, people say you can't do it, you say I can.
I would say to everybody that, you know, if you really want to do it, go out there, go for it, and don't let anybody hold you back.
Fantastic.
And be good.
Yeah. Be good, be kind, and get involved, because life isn't a spectator sport. So on that note, thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, viewers. Inshallah, see you next time. Assalamu alaikum.